So I've always wanted to do a quick expose on this guy, on this Abu Layth character, who I don't know why he doesn't have the courage, and I've said this before, he doesn't have the courage to admit his stance. Like, with all due respect, there's lots of ex-Muslims out there that just explain to the world that, okay, I'm an ex-Muslim now. Others, like Majid Nawaz and others, they, for some reason, cling on to the Muslim label, whereas, for all intents and purposes, what they believe is nothing to do with the religion of Islam. In fact, it's more in line with other belief systems or ideologies. So why don't these people have, why doesn't he have the courage to just come out and say where he stands on the issues? Whether he actually believes in the things in the Quran and Sunnah as truth, as objective truth. If you look at what this man actually says, and I'm going to put a clip right now just to show you what I'm talking about, him talking with a guy called Dr. Hashimi, who's a medical doctor, not necessarily a professor in any kind of Islamic related field. They're talking about their approach to the Quran, and they candidly talk about the stories there as mythological. And so really kind of iterating what the Quran refers to as the disbelievers saying, that they say it's nothing but asatirul awwaleen, the legends of the ancient. And they are nonchalantly mentioning this and thinking that they have a claim to Islam thereafter. That you can say that these stories and these histories that are pertained within the Quranic discourse are somehow mythological, and then you can come to a viewpoint that that this is that you're a Muslim. How do the two things connect? That, in addition to the fact that you are a traitor to the Muslim community, especially with the Palestine issue, and we will be exposing that just as Dr. Norman Finkelstein exposed you. Okay, and correctly asked, as we'll put in this video, who gave this guy a voice? Unfortunately, it was us that gave him a voice. But I think he's pretty much cancelled now, and anyone who dares even mention this guy in the public sphere as in any way connected to the Muslim voice is only deluding themselves. The video really is a really good one if one wants to know what the methodology of the two people that you see on the screen. It was sent to me, this video, by somebody, and this probably is the most damaging part of the video in terms of outlining their own methodology. These two individuals claim to be Muslim. They're still hanging on to a Muslim identity, which boggles the mind, really, why you still claim to be Muslim after you take the views that we're going to see that they take in terms of the Quran. And obviously the title of this, Axes of Morality and Archetypal Myths in the Quran, clearly here speaks volumes in and of itself. But let's see what he says here.
Some people finding it interesting, and some people finding it, as you'll get normal questions.
So now to come to the meat of the issue.
Okay.
I would answer as Professor Fazlur Rahman did. Now, he's the University of Chicago professor, not Maulana Diesel, as some people might be confused with. So Professor Fazlur Rahman, who was the quintessential Islamic modernist, and by the way, I identify openly as an Islamic modernist, and I take pride in that. And we can talk about that later. But he said that, it's a very brief passage, but I highlighted it and I started, and in one of his books he wrote, believers need to stop worrying about the historical and archaeological enterprises that are going on right now, because they're so fearful that it will disprove the historical truths, the historical reality of some of the events that are mentioned. For example, the Exodus. So we are so worried that if the Exodus gets proven historically not true, then our belief goes down the drain. What I'm arguing is, we don't know. What we know for certain is that Prophet Muhammad existed, that Jesus existed, and that with Jesus, alayhi salam, he had the way the Quran deals with the story is in a literary way, and it actually is, we should focus on what the Quran is doing as opposed to just what it is saying. So for example, when it talks about miracles, what the Quran is doing is actually saying, is re-articulating the story for theological ends, not to narrate history. It's saying that yes, Jesus may have done all of these things in your sacred stories, but really it's reattributing them to God, that they did it with the God's permission. So if you take a literary lens, you no longer have to say that this is historically what the Prophet is doing and the Quran is doing. It's re-articulating these stories in different ways.
Are they just stories?
So yes, it's a legend, and legends are usually, not always, but usually based on actual historical figures, but certain things are dramatized. So I don't think that he actually spoke in the cradle or rose the dead. These things are literary.
Okay, so this takes him out of the fold of Islam. There's no doubt about it. If he thinks that, I mean, this is literally what the Quran is saying. This is literally what the Quran says, and I believe both of them fit the category. They both do this quite regularly. This takes someone out of the fold of Islam without a shadow of a doubt. The Quran says that they will say it's asatirul awwaleen, literally the legends of the ancient, and he's very candid and nonchalant in his. He thinks he's clever, but he really is not. In his is saying this guy here. So anyone who sees any of these two people, you should know that they are basically not brave as the ex-Muslims, who just come out and say, you know, we've left the religion for all intents and purposes. They're just people that, like Majid Nawaz, for some strange reason, hang on to the Muslim label. So this gives you a little bit of who they are in terms of methodology. Let's take a look at what this animal has to say, this pusillanimous, this coward, this charlatan, this weasel, yes? Let's take a look at what he has to say about Palestine and giving it to the Jews, in his words.
I then would argue for a complete exile of all Palestinians. I would say that all Palestinians should leave Palestine, and it should be facilitated for them. Sorry, by Palestine, I mean the Gaza Strip and the parts that are kind of blocked in clearly by Israel. Now, I feel that they should be relocated and comfortably with compensation and accommodation and education paid for in different parts of the Arab world, Arabic speaking.
Of course, someone like you would say that someone who's been arrested for extreme pornography, we don't know what that is, whether it's bestiality or child porn, because the definitions of extreme pornography fall into that. And I don't know why people would even want to associate with you someone so despicable as an individual to be caught with extreme pornography, which by UK law, the standard of which may mean that you possessed child pornography or bestiality or something like this, and you're connected with child groomers, and now you think you have the audacity to sit there and tell us what we should and shouldn't do with such an issue as the Palestine issue. What arrogance and what diabolical and embarrassing, statements that just expose you further for what you are. You're a fraud, a charlatan.
Well, so acclimatizing is not difficult for them, and they shouldn't be set up as ghettos or clusters, but kind of spread out. And there's many Arab countries in the world, and I'm sure that could even happen, and Israel probably would even be happy to pay for it, because the amount of money it spends on even bombing them these things don't come cheap. So, but the problem with this
Look how disgusting, how easily and casually he talks about bombing Palestinian people. Well, this guy's a joke. Honestly, this guy is a joke of the Muslim community. For any Muslim, okay, who follows this guy, I'm absolutely disassociated from you, with all due respect. How can you follow a guy that speaks so candidly about Muslim suffering and Palestinian suffering in this way, and who is, for all intents and purposes, everything almost he utters with regard to Islamic law is kharij da'irat al-Islam, outside of the scope of Islam? This guy's a joke. This Dr. Norman Finkelstein here, he's humiliating this charlatan, this academic charlatan, Abu Layth, who he calls himself mufti. He's absolutely not a mufti in any sense of the word. This guy is an absolute charlatan. And look at Dr. Norman Finkelstein here. So you give this more of a voice to spout his nonsense. He's either stupid or paid to be a clown, potentially both. And absolutely. And he's quoting some of the things that he said. Dr. Norman Finkelstein is one of the esteemed professors in this field. In fact, he's foremost in this field. He's written many books on this. And he finds this abhorrent. This guy thinks he's clever, but he finds this abhorrent. I can't stand this guy. Look at the comments. This guy, Bolu, I've seen Bolu. I think he sums it up quite well. He says here, he worked with the Quillian Foundation, which, as we know, Majid Nawaz, etc. He tried to prove his credibility by showing up with classical scholars and selfies. After the scholars got aware about his heresy and deviance and lies, they rejected him publicly, and this clown on side accused him of extremism afterwards. He is a munafiq. A munafiq basically means he's a pretend Muslim. He doesn't believe, he's not actually a believer. And, why not just come out and say, if you are that, why not just come out and say, well, I'm not a Muslim. Be brave. I mean, there's lots of non-Muslims out there, ex-Muslims. Be brave like them. I actually respect the ex-Muslims more than this guy. I respect them more than this guy because they just make their agenda clear. This guy's trying to have his cake and eat it both. I am on the record now as saying I respect ex-Muslims more than this fake Mufti Abu Layth.